in this moment, this morning, our sacred rule of law is under attack. Journalism is under attack. Universities are under attack. Freedom of speech is under attack. And insidious fear is reaching through our schools, our businesses, our homes, and into our private thoughts. The fear to speak in America. Power can rewrite history with grotesque, false narratives. They can make criminals heroes and heroes criminals. Power can change the definition of the words we use to describe reality. Diversity is now described as illegal. Equity is to be shunned. Inclusion is a dirty word. This is an old playbook, my friends. There's nothing new in this.
Yeah, the great Scott Pelley getting us started today with an excerpt from his commencement speech at Wake Forest a couple of days ago. Scott Pelley, of course, is one of the CBS News anchors and 60 Minutes reporters and an American icon and legend we learned last night. Also a sex symbol, if you ask our friend Kevin Richburg. Hello and welcome to today's episode of Stand Up. I've got the great Randi Weingarten joining me as a very special guest today, the president of the biggest teachers union in the country, the American Federation of Teachers, also the biggest nurses union. Great conversation with Randi. If you want to jump to it, it starts at 25 minutes into today's show. But first, I want to thank everybody who joined me at last night's hangout. We did almost 3 hours on a Memorial Day Monday night, and I was so happy to see all of you who joined me. There was about 40 of us, I think, there together. It was really great. If you want to watch it or relive it or re-listen to it, you can share. I have shared the link to subscribers in an email with this show. It's included, and if you're not a subscriber, sign up now. Patreon.com/Pete Dominic is where we do it. You'll have access to the Discord platform, which apparently I don't participate in nearly enough, although I should, and I will. I always say that. Anyway, thank you very much for joining me on today's show. I've got your news, I've got your clips, and I've got you, and I'm here, and that's the deal. That's what we do every day, so let's get to it. Yesterday, of course, was Memorial Day, and our tiny king, mad, bald felon gave a horrific speech at Arlington Cemetery and posted a terrible, awful tribute that started with Happy Memorial Day to all, including the scum that spent the last 4 years trying to destroy our country through warped radical left minds. And then just got worse from there. He then posted telling people to enjoy his speech at Arlington Cemetery. Enjoy. Okay, thanks. Trump voter and former talk show host John Cardillo said, sorry, but this is grossly inappropriate. There's nothing happy about Memorial Day, and the rest of it is on this day is just unbecoming for a commander-in-chief. Sad part is pretty much everyone feels the same, but too many are afraid to speak up. In his speech at Arlington before Trump, the Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, had repeatedly expressed hostility in the past to women serving, refused to even acknowledge him. The American soldier fights not because he hates what is in front of him, but because he loves what is behind him. We honor his sacrifice, his courage, his duty, and his love. The young man with hopes and dreams and loves is called by his country, leaves behind his hometown, his parents, his siblings, his sweetheart, all that he knows to go to fight a war he may or may not understand. Trump went about as far as he had to go, ever gone, criticizing Vladimir Putin a little bit when he was asked about recent bombings after Ukraine signed the ceasefire agreement. He said, I'm not happy with what Putin is doing. He's killing a lot of people, and I don't know what the hell happened to Putin. I've known him a long time. We're in the middle of talking, and he's shooting rockets at Kiev and other cities. I don't like it at all. I'm surprised. He's surprised. He's the only one who is surprised. I'll play a clip from Brit Hume in a moment saying, I don't understand why he's surprised. About an hour later, Trump posted I've always had a good relationship with Vladimir Putin of Russia, but something's happened to him. He's gone absolutely crazy. He's needlessly killing a lot of people, and I'm not just talking about soldiers. Missiles and drones are being shot into cities in Ukraine for no reason whatsoever. I've always said that he wants all of Ukraine, not just a piece of it, and maybe that's proving to be right. But if he does, it will lead to the downfall of Russia. But that wasn't the end of his post, because he also felt compelled to blame the victim again. Likewise, Zelensky is doing his country no favors by talking the way he does. Everything out of his mouth causes problems. I don't like it. It better stop. This is a war that would never have started if I were president. This is Zelensky's, Putin's, and Biden's war, not Trump's. I am only helping to put out the big and ugly fires that have been started through gross incompetence and hatred. Congressman Don Bacon, a Republican of Nebraska, said on Fox News, the first half of this message is perfect. The rest is just dumb. Trump is attacking President Zelensky while Putin bombs Ukrainian cities, and it's misguided moral ambiguity while one nation invades another is hurting Trump's credibility. Putin is making a mockery of Trump, and Trump keeps attacking Zelensky. In other words, writes Ron Filipkowski, Trump promised repeatedly during the campaign that he had a secret plan to end the war in 24 hours. He was just bullshitting everyone because he doesn't have the first clue what to do. He gave away all negotiating leverage months ago when he agreed upfront to most of what Russia was asking for before negotiations even began, and his stupid special envoy negotiating it all, Steve Witkoff, is a dope. Witkoff, the man Trump entrusted to negotiate an end to the war, has never been a diplomat, never served in the military, never worked in government in any capacity. He's not a historian, an expert on affairs in the region. He got the job because he's a wealthy real estate investor pal of Trump's from New York City. Witkoff's son is a major player in the crypto industry, which is now Trump's largest source of revenue. Witkoff has never even taken a single person from the State Department with him during any of his 4 meetings with Putin, and even used a Kremlin translator because he didn't bring his own. Why has this been a disaster? Because Trump and Witkoff are incompetent clowns. Former Republican Speaker Newt Gingrich said Putin will not be convinced to talk. He will have to be coerced by economically and militarily eliminating his ability to wage war. As long as he can wage war, he will. This is his legacy, and he recently pointed out Russia fought Sweden for 21 years. He wants to conquer all of Ukraine and then push forward Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Moldova, and Finland next on the list. The time now is to stop him, and the place is Ukraine. Representative Don Bacon posts on X, it's time for honesty. Peace talks are having zero effect on Putin. His goal is to dominate Ukraine. He won't stop until he realizes he cannot win. The U.S. and allies must arm Ukraine to the teeth, sanction Russia to the max, and confiscate the $300 billion in Russian overseas assets. Chuck Grassley, senator of Iowa, who's 700 years old, said, I've had enough of Putin killing innocent people. President Trump, take action, at least sanctions. And Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov responded that Trump was just being too emotional. He actually wrote this. This is amazing. The Russian Kremlin spokesman said, we're taking the decisions that are necessary to ensure the security of our country. We're really grateful to the Americans and the President Trump personally for their assistance in organizing and launching this negotiation process. Of course, at the same time, this is a very crucial moment which is associated with an emotional overload of everyone, absolutely, and with emotional reactions. And the French president, Macron, whose wife slapped him in the face on camera, and that's a big controversy, said President Trump now realized that when Putin said on the phone he was ready for peace, or told his envoys he was ready for peace, he lied. We have seen once again in recent hours Trump express his anger, a form of impatience. I simply hope that now translates into action. I wouldn't count on it, Macron. You got other problems that you might want to deal with too. And the German Chancellor, Merz, announced that a major restriction on Ukraine is finally being lifted. There are no longer any range restrictions on weapons supplied to Ukraine, not from the British, not from the French, not from us, not from Americans either. This means that Ukraine can also defend itself by attacking military positions in Russia. It could not have do that some time ago, and with very few exceptions, it didn't do that until some time ago, and now it can. So they're equipping Ukraine with weapons that can attack deep into Russia, which is a pretty big deal. Editor of The Insider, Michael Weiss, writes, interesting on two levels. This suggests the U.S. is consenting to unrestricted deep strikes with American weapons. Also strongly hints that Germany will send the Taurus cruise missiles. Putin's spokesman responded to the range restrictions on weapons being supplied to Ukraine being lifted, saying this contradicts Moscow's aspirations for a political settlement. Okay, well, there you go. How about that for a big, robust recap of what's going on with Russia, Ukraine, and all of the other players around it. All right, let's get to some other news. UK police have arrested a man after a car plowed into Liverpool fans during the soccer club's Premier League trophy parade last night, injuring dozens of people, including children. The man arrested is a 53-year-old white British man from Liverpool area. A total of 27 people were taken to hospital, apparently. 2 of the hospitalized, 1 child and 1 adult, had sustained head injuries. 4 people, 3 adults and 1 child had to be removed from underneath the vehicle, according to authorities there, who said further 20 people were treated at the scene for minor injuries. Still no word on the motivation for the attacker, but that is some scary shit and a terrible way to have your celebration destroyed. And we'll see if there was any motive, if it was done on purpose, which it seems definitely to be in the days to come. The Homeland Security Secretary, Kristi Noem, went to Israel. She met with officials in Israel on Sunday and Monday as she underscored American support for Israel and policy disagreements between the two countries. She met with Benjamin Netanyahu and the foreign minister and attended a ceremony that commemorated 2 Israeli embassy aides who were killed last week in a shooting in Washington. Speaking at the ceremony, she talked about her dog that she once killed. No, she said President Trump extends his greetings and his grief to all of you, and he stands with you as we fight this hatred in this world. She also spoke of a unity among us that will help us defeat our enemies. Meanwhile, Israel is slaughtering innocents in Gaza. I'm not sure she had anything to say about that. Let's see what's next. The former dean of New York's congressional delegation, who became the first black chairman of the powerful House Ways and Means Committee, Charles Rangel, passed away yesterday. He was relinquished that position, by the way, when he was censured for an ethics violation eventually at the end of his career. He was 94 years old. His death was announced by his family. A mainstay of Harlem's Democratic old guard, Charlie Rangel, first elected Congress in 1970, topping the civil rights pioneer Adam Clayton Powell, who was a 13-year incumbent. Went on to serve the House longer than any New Yorker but one, who was Emanuel Seller, who represented Brooklyn for nearly 50 years until his death in 1972. Charlie Rangel. Okay, I guess your final headline is this one. A guy, he swam all the way around Martha's Vineyard ahead of the 50th anniversary of Jaws. He is a British South African endurance athlete, and he became the first person to swim around the island of Martha's Vineyard, completing the 60-mile trek over multiple days to raise awareness about the plight of sharks as the film Jaws nears its 50th birthday. Really? Lewis Pugh, he's 55 years old. Well, that's inspiring. He began swimming multiple hours a day in the 47-degree water on May 15th, and he wants to change public perceptions and encourage protections for the at-risk animals, sharks, which he said the film maligned as villains and cold-blooded killers. He said, we've been fighting sharks for 50 years. Now we need to make peace with them. Okay. All right. Mr. Pugh, I'm very impressed. I will make peace with sharks as a result of your epic swim. He swam for about 24 hours over 12 days, and then he went and he got ice cream. So I thought that was a fun story to end on. Okay. Let's get to some audio for you. I've got just a few clips today, but let's start with, I thought this was a pretty good conversation between CNN anchor Sarah Seidner and James Stavridis, who is a former naval commander and NATO Supreme Commander, talking about Russia, Ukraine, and Trump finally realizing that Putin is a really bad guy who's a liar, basically the last person to know, but still, as Stavridis says, hallelujah.
I want to ask you about what we're seeing here. It seems that Putin at this point is just thumbing his nose at the peace talks, at Trump, at Zelensky, and basically, I mean, would you say he's showing them he's going to do what he wants no matter what is said?
I think that's right, Sarah. Another way to put it is that Putin continues to kind of bob and weave in the boxing ring. He is not coming to grips with the fact that President Trump is, in fact, losing patience with him. And you know what? When President Trump says that Vladimir Putin is absolutely crazy, I can give you my reaction to that in 2 words. Hallelujah, amen. Welcome to Team West, Team Democracy. It's really time we did more than just call out Vladimir Putin. And as you just heard Jackie talking about a moment ago, I think the three levers that President Trump has over Putin are, number one, $300 billion in Russian assets that are frozen in Western banks under the control of Brussels. Number two, let's give the Ukrainians more long-range weapons so they can reach further into Russia itself and hold Russian infrastructure and military targets at risk. And I think number three, and probably most obvious and could be done tonight, would be sanctions, secondary sanctions. Anybody who does business with Russia cannot do business with the United States. So bottom line, Sarah, we have leverage. President Trump sounds to me like he's ready to use it. Let's hope they go forward in that spirit on this Memorial Day.
Yeah, look, at the same time, though, while we're hearing him for the first time really going after Putin, calling him absolutely crazy, as you mentioned, we're also hearing him go after Zelensky again. Zelensky felt like the United States was silent after the worst drone attack that they've seen since the war began. And I'm curious if this sort of unfortunately levels the playing field in Trump's mind, because he's also said to Zelensky, to basically knock it off, that he doesn't like to hear what he has to say on this. What do you think of the relationships and how that all plays into this?
Life is so often compared to what? And compared to a couple of months ago when Zelensky was literally kicked out of the Oval Office, and there were, I think, quite serious threats to simply cut off intelligence permanently. We had done so on a temporary basis. That was really rock bottom. So compared to then, I think we're in a much better place. Would be my advice to President Zelensky. Manage your Trump account carefully right now. This is not the time to be critical, to say, why haven't we heard more from the United States? Yeah. And frankly, hearing Donald Trump call Putin absolutely crazy is a great moment for Ukraine. What I would be telling President Zelensky is stand up and applaud when you finally get the President of the United States to say what you need him to say, and to be the leader of the band of the West. So I think it's a moment for Zelensky to manage the Trump account.
And there you go. That's all I've got for you on that from CNN yesterday, James Stavridis. But here over on Fox is Brit Hume trying to make sense of Trump's reaction at this point to Putin. This again on Fox with Brit Hume.
Brit, you heard what President Trump had to say there about Russia. You reacted to it a short while ago, saying that you're glad to hear President Trump say this. Putin hasn't changed. He's always been a brutal tyrant. But do you think those comments mean a change from the White House? Are we going to see sanctions, or does President Trump just wash his hands of this whole thing?
Well, I think it's something to hope for, Rich. I do. But the president has always had a very odd conception of Vladimir Putin. I think he's thought that he and Putin could be kind of friends and partners and could make deals together and so on. I don't think Putin has changed. I don't know what the president's talking about. This is the way Putin has always been. He's always been a particularly brutal dictator, willing to take whatever measures he thought necessary to advance his interests, whatever he thought he could get away with. He thought he could get away with invading Ukraine. He thought he could conquer Ukraine in a matter of days. He failed to do that, and he has been spending his own people's blood and treasure for as long as he's needed to after that. And now he seems more intent than ever. He's the same old Vladimir Putin. So I hope the president has had a real moment of truth about him, and will proceed accordingly. He does, as you've just heard pointed out, have leverage, economic leverage in particular, but military leverage as well, because we could supply the Ukrainians with more arms than we have, and that might turn the tide.
All right, now I want to revisit the Jubilee 20 atheists versus one Christian, that Christian being Jordan Peterson, who, again, this is an example of a guy who is considered an intellectual, but when put up against far smarter people, in this case, young atheists, this is really worth watching. I watched more of it last night. He falls apart, and you can hear the language sparring here, but it's very weak at best, I think. And I wanted to share another clip. This young kid destroys Jordan Peterson, and I am here for it. And now, so are you.
Why is that relevant?
Because you go to a Catholic church, don't you? Or you've attended recently. You're interested in Catholicism, aren't you?
Sure.
All right. Are you familiar with their doctrines?
Somewhat.
Okay. You're
their
familiar.
Doctrines are very
how do they
deep.
regard Mary?
Why are you asking me that?
Because you're a Christian.
You say that. I haven't claimed that.
Oh, what is this? Is this Christians versus atheists?
I don't know.
You don't know where you are right now.
Don't be a smartass.
Well,
and I mean,
either you're a Christian or you're not.
I won't talk to you if you're a smartass.
Oh, either you're a Christian or you're not. Which one is it?
I could be either of them, but I don't have to tell you.
You don't have to tell me. I was under the impression I was invited to talk to a Christian. Am I not talking to a Christian?
No, you were invited to.
I think everyone should look at the title of the YouTube channel. You're probably in the wrong YouTube video.
You're really quite something, you are.
Aren't I? But you're really quite nothing. Right? You're not a Christian.
Okay, I'm done with him.
Oh, no, done with him. I was getting really good. I liked it. All right, well, here are some laughs or some cries, depending on how you put it. This is Jay Alcovan doing his Trump impression for Memorial Day, kind of recapping the insanity. And obviously, it's hyperbolic exaggeration. But, of course, just barely. Let's do it.
Memorial Day is a very sacred Memorial Day is a very sacred day where we remember how bad Sleepy Joe's memory is compared to mine. It's a very important holiday. There's also something about troops dying. I like the living ones, to be honest. You know, the living ones can still call you sir. The dead ones just sit there doing nothing. But that's okay. It's called sacrifice. And, you know, some of these people, if they'd gotten shot in Pennsylvania, they might have been dead. I didn't happen to die. I happened to live. And live very strongly to become president again. But when you're talking in terms of important holidays, it's an important one. You know, we go to the movies. You got Lilo and Stitch, who's from Hawaii. And we're looking, maybe he's from Hawaii, maybe he's from Kenya, like Barack Hussein Obama. We don't know. Nobody at Disney, which has gotten very woke, is looking into anything. They're just putting out these movies. We don't know where the hell Stitch is from, okay? Some people say he's from another country. Some people say he's from another planet, and we don't know. We do have Tom Cruise in a movie, which we love that. So it's very important to support our film industries before I tariff the crap out of them, because that's what the troops who died would want. They'd want movies. They were big fans of them. A lot of the troops who died, they loved movies. They loved their movies so much, and they'd be very mad if you didn't go see movies. But Memory Day, which we talk about Sleepy Joe's, really awful memory. Even when he was all there, he didn't have a great memory. And I certainly think that him losing the election to me was a very bad memory, even though he technically didn't run against me. He let Koala Bear Harris do it, so he's a coward, but that's okay. We won. They all lost. But the most important holiday is probably June 14th. Which we will be calling Juneteenth from now on to honor a non-DEI person, me, because it's my birthday. Now, they used to call it Flag Day, which Mike Pence got very excited about, and now Mike Johnson gets very excited about. I said flag with an L. Relax, fellas. And because we're going to have a military parade, a proper honor for our military. You know, a lot better than Memorial Day, which is for dead people. My birthday will be a holiday for living military people, most importantly their commander-in-chief, me. Great holiday.
Uncanny. So good. Jay Alcovan, go support him, and he's always great. I hope you like that as much as I did. Now it's time to get to my featured guest here on a quiet Tuesday. Is it quiet? I don't know. It's your perspective. She is the president of the American Federation of Teachers, former public school teacher herself. I have met and worked with her, I don't know, half a dozen times, at different teachers union conventions, including the National Gala at AFT. Of course, they are a 1.8 million member union representing teachers, paraprofessionals, school-related personnel, higher education, faculty, staff, nurses, and other healthcare professionals, local, state, and federal government employees, and early childhood educators. AFT dedicated to the belief that every person in America deserves the freedom to thrive, fueled by opportunity, justice, and a voice in our democracy. And I love Randi. I love talking to her. I love catching up with her. I'm always happy when she joins me, and we wanted to talk about the reconciliation bill. We wanted to talk about the efforts to privatize public education through vouchers. Whatever else we could get to, you can watch this interview on YouTube at youtube.com/standupwithpete, and you should follow and support Randi and AFT everywhere on social media, and teachers and public education in general. Let's do it right now with Randi Weingarten. Well, we're live now. I just commented on your look. That's all people heard, but I look very sharp too. You said so. We're looking great live, and there's plenty to talk about. So glad to have you joining me, and we haven't talked since before the election, and so you've got a whole different agenda now that you've got to deal with and struggles that you got to deal with. So let's start with just kind of where you thought you were going to be, and then we're going to get to the Reconciliation Act and all these cuts. But as soon as Trump gets elected and you see who he starts appointing, you can, like, how do you start planning at AFT for how to handle this obvious fight?
Well, first off, Pete, it's always amazing to see you, and I love that we're both, I mean, I'm from Clarkstown, so I feel like we're family,
Yeah,
I grew up there.
Yeah. Randi, of course, grew up in the school that my daughters are still in, and that I've been in the fight. She knows all about the local Board of Education and the National Board of Education fight.
Right,
So yeah,
exactly
it's great to connect that way.
So let me just say, what I love about my members is that right after the election, we did some polling and we posited the question. We basically said, we think what we should be continuing to do is fight for a better life for people. That the through line in our membership is that everybody basically makes a difference in somebody else's life, whether it's an educator, a healthcare professional, or somebody in public services. And over 90% of our folks said, yeah, that's our agenda. And look, when you have a president who actually believes in having a better life, then you're fighting over policy and you're fighting about how fast you can get it done. Like, the industrial policy that Joe Biden did started creating a lot more manufacturing jobs. And that's part of what we started pinning our career tech ed work to, in terms of having a pipeline from high school to high school to work in addition to a college pipeline. But what happens is when you have a president who doesn't believe in any of that, you got to fight before you move forward, but you still have to have an agenda that moves forward. And I think oftentimes what happened when people start talking about democracy is that if you're not steeped, sorry, that's my dog in back of me, if you're not steeped in the understanding that a democracy is the only way working people over the long term can have a voice for progress, then you just really think about democracy as, all you care about is the status quo. And I think
really
that
well
was a huge problem in the election. And listening to John Roberts say in the last couple of weeks, all we have to do is we should have been teaching civics more in schools. And look, he's the Supreme Court. I agree we have to teach civics more. But when you do No Child Left Behind, so the fixation is on test scores, where's the time to teach civics? Where's the time to do project-based instruction? And to teach civics, you have to be willing to spend the time to solve a problem, which means it's not 5 minutes of teaching, these are the 3 branches of government. So it's a long way of basically saying the membership, I think, really said, still focus on a better life, but we got to fight somebody who wants to try to make it worse. And now, several months into his presidency, I think the uncertainty on the economy and, frankly, on the democracy, there's a lot more people today that see he's a problem than saw it on November 5th.
Yeah, well, I hope you're right about that. And you see the vision kind of coalescing, coming to fruition, not the vision of the Trump administration. I mean, I've been talking to you for a long time, but even before that, I suppose you could say from the point the Department of Education was created, it has been under threat to be destroyed. Right. What does it mean when they say they're going to destroy, disrupt, take apart, end the Department of Education, and that you appoint someone who openly says that is her goal? Linda McMahon was in hearings last week being asked about this. What does it mean to have the Department of Education cut or completely destroyed? What does that mean for America's students, for Americans' educators, for us?
So let's take it in two ways. One, there's the practical. Let me put that aside for a second. Two, there's the symbolic. And the symbolic is, really? Really? In a country like America, the United States of America, the first things you do is assault universities and assault education? You're basically saying, sorry, I get so angry about this. You're basically saying, I don't care that you don't care about other people's children. And I don't care if other people's children are black or white or Jewish, Christian. You're saying when you want to get rid of education, you don't care about other people's children. You care about your own. You'll make sure your own.
Well, I care about middle. I care about middle income. I care about middle income and upper affluent people's children. I don't care as much about lower income.
No, I don't actually think they care about that either, frankly. If you look at the big ugly, I don't think they care about that either. I think that the symbolic issue here, because even on the stuff they care about, when they say they care about AI or career tech ed, they don't put any money in there either.
Right.
You know, so they care about their friends and the people they care about getting rich, but I don't think they care about other people's children, whoever they are. And I think so that's a symbolic value when you say you're getting rid of the Department of Education, because, you know, spoiler alert, the department doesn't control curriculum. We actually all changed that in 2015, and the department is no longer the HR director of any school district. We changed that also in 2015. So basically what the department does, and this gets to the nitty-gritty, it actually is an opportunity gap filler. That's what it does. So poor kids, Pell Grants to go to college. Poor kids even in Clarkstown get Title I funding.
Yep.
So that they can have after-school activities, lower class sizes, a reading specialist. And because of school-wide projects, you can make that happen for everybody. And literally 26 million kids. Kids with disabilities get IDEA. So it's a gap filler. And basically, they don't want to fill those gaps. And instead, what they're doing is they want to take this money and they want to make it a piggy bank for the rich. They're basically saying, okay, let's put it into vouchers. Let's call this choice. Right. I mean, it is somebody's choice. It's the school's choice. Like private schools get to decide who they want. It's not a parent's choice. And in fact, in all these states which have had vouchers, and so say a voucher is $7,000 or $5,000, you see the Tony private schools increasing their tuition, so they still get to make the decisions about who they want. And 70% of the people who get these vouchers in the states that have them are basically rich. So on top of it, it's a piggy bank for the rich to basically. So when people say that this big new reconciliation bill is the big ugly, I know the president calls it the big beautiful bill. I kind of call it is definitely big, but I call it the big ugly. But what it really is is it the biggest transfer of wealth from poor and middle class to rich probably ever.
Is there policy issues in the big ugly as well? I call it the big bad billionaires bill.
Yeah.
Is there policy pronouncements? Because there's so much in this bill that I don't even know if you guys at AFT have gotten to get through it and understand what it means. But between the cuts to the Department of Education, DOGE, and this giant piece of legislation, it's hard to know what that means for America's public schools.
Well, there's policy issues in it. It's basically taking money and look, some of it, I mean, I know some of my folks will say, why are you saying this? But some of it, like extending 529s, which were the savings account for higher ed, extending it to K-12. I mean, that's a perfectly legitimate policy that's tucked in this bill somewhere. But 95% of what's tucked in this bill, and notice the Republicans came into power, they said, no, we're going to make sure people can read bills. We're going to make sure they 24 hours, none of that. What's mostly in this bill in terms of policy is they got a lot more money for defense. They basically take away a lot of the money that was done to try to create new, different ways of energy. They take away $800 billion of funding for people on Medicaid, which by our account means about 13 million people will be off Medicaid, and they take away the funding for the ACA tax credits. The stuff that they do for working class people are weird. We should, frankly, have a working class tax cut. Like, let's just have a working class tax cut. Like, let's do that for everybody who earns less than $70,000. But instead, what they do, and then the SNAP funding, nutritional assistance, is terrible. Basically, it's going to put every food bank out of business. And on education, it's this piggy bank to take funds away from education. That's what they're doing with this new voucher tax shelter. But what they also do is basically make college far less affordable or attainable for most of the kids who are not rich, at the same time as they're assaulting colleges. So the policy in here, and then because there's so much deficit increasing, because it increases the deficit so much, there's a $500 billion cut to Medicare too. So they've now cut Medicare, they've cut Medicaid, they've cut food assistance, they've cut college affordability. The stuff for regular folks is negligible. And so when you look at it, basically people who earn less than $51,000 are going to be paying more taxes. And people who earn more than $4 million or have $4 million in passive income, they're going to get a tax return of about $400,000.
Also, the one thing you didn't mention,
the bill.
I didn't ask specifically about this, but within all of that too, or outside all of that, the trade war tariffs are the largest tax increase in a generation ever, maybe, that we've ever seen. In effect, that's what they are, this trade war. So you're losing any kind of benefits or opportunity on one end, and you're also paying more taxes if you are someone in the lower half or lower thirds, really, even of wage earners.
And for the New Yorkers and the New Jersey folk, I mean, I've been a big believer in SALT, state and local tax deduction. I've tried to get it restored. The way in which they cut it, by having a limit on top of AGI and all these other stuff, that's intended to continue the flow out of our states of people who make a lot of money. Like, people who make a lot of money in our states basically pay a lot of taxes, but they could get their state and local taxes a deduction off their federal. So it was incentivizing the services that New York, New Jersey, California do. So by them creating a cap there, it was just venal. They just want people to leave our states.
it's surprising that blue state MAGA Trumpers, weren't turned off just by that alone. But let me ask you before I let you go here, what are you asking people to do, whether we are a member of a union or not? What can we do? To have our voices heard. We feel so limited and frustrated with what we can do. You're one of the most inspiring leaders. I'll do whatever you tell me to do. If you tell me to go do something, I will go do it no matter what it is. Yes, I will jump off that. I will sail a Mexican naval ship.
I do not want you hurting yourself. We need
I
you
would
to
if
be
you told me
part.
to.
No, but A, I wouldn't tell you to, and B, please do not do it, even if I did. So
I'm just showing off is usually how I hurt myself. But
this is what we need people to do. The courts are holding, but look what happens when a law firm like Perkins Coie or a college like Harvard.
Yeah.
I mean, us too, we've lost our grants from the federal government. It's like, we had grants for career tech ed. They took them away. I mean,
Crazy.
When people stand up, they will target them and they will bully them. But what's happened is that the more people stand up, the less chance that people are going to get bullied. So the key really is, this is the key. Every time we stop a bully or we stop the backsliding of democracy, sorry, I'm being so, 11th grade social studies teacher on you. It's because people stand up and they're not fearful or they're not apathetic. The dictators, the authoritarians, they want people to be either fearful or apathetic. They want people to say, oh, I hate politics, or what can I do? So the most important thing to do, like June 14th, no King's Day, the most important thing to do is to show up, represent, be out on the streets, not by yourself, but with other people. Right. That's the most important thing to do right now. And then what we're doing is we're trying to really show the harm that's happening with all these cuts in terms of either public education, college, or healthcare or Social Security. But we're also still fighting for a better life and for policies, either on a local or state level, to make a better life. And then there's lots of other groups that are doing great things. So even let me boast a little bit about what my wife is doing. She's a rabbi. She started something called the Beacon Project. And what they're doing is they're basically doing a split screen. They're shining a light when there's cruelty. They're shining a light for kindness. And she started it because people said, I'm not in a union. I don't have a big group. What can I do alone? Just like your question, what can I do? What can I do? So every Thursday night now, in groups around the country, and it takes like 2 or 3 people, they come together on a corner. They have signs from 7 to 7:30 every Thursday night, wherever they are. So Teaneck, which started with like 3 or 4 people, there's now 50 people in Teaneck in the park doing that. In our corner in Inwood, New York, there's 25 people every Thursday night from 7 to 7:30, including this amazing kid who has a sign that says, in my class, I learned that presidents are not kings. So you think about June 14th, Flag Day. We're America. We're not about kings. We're about patriotism. So take Flag Day, where so many veterans, so many people in our armed forces fought for us to have freedom. That's why we have no King's Day. Showing up in community with each other, it sends a message not only to Donald Trump, sends a message to your congressman that we are not going away. We want our country back. We want it to be better, but don't take away our health care. Don't take away our public schools. Don't do this. Don't cut essential services for people so you can have tax cuts for billionaires.
And of course, the other thing, those kinds of
initiatives do and gatherings do is it reminds people that you're not alone and that there is solidarity, and no one knows about solidarity more than you. So
exactly.
Thank you so much for joining me. As always, it's great to see you. I hope you have a great Memorial Day weekend and keep up the great work leading and inspiring us, Randi. Really appreciate you as always.
Thank you, Pete. Thank you.
All right, there she goes. Randi Weingarten, AFT. Go support her. Go support the organization, even more importantly, that she speaks on the behalf of and leads. She's so good. I always enjoy talking to her. She's been demonized and demagogued for years by the right, and she just never wavers. She's a real fighter, a very inspiring speaker and leader, and I always enjoy our conversations. That's the day's show. It's the day's show. And John Carroll sings every day in and out to us, and we love it. And he's got a brand new album out. You should go buy it, johncarroll.org. If you are a listener, subscriber who would like me to put links to your work in the show notes, let me know. standupwithpete@gmail.com. Happy to do that. Been doing that for a few listeners for a while now who have been contributors to me and my work. So would love to do that. And thank you very much for listening all the way to the end here. You bumblebees are the best. I will talk to you tomorrow, and I am so thankful that you joined me here today. Bye-bye. Be good. Fight suffering. Find joy. And go do something nice for someone else.
Sunlight.